questions we wrestle with as Christians about who God is, how do we live out our faith, what is the Bible, what is the truth of the Bible, what are we supposed to believe, how are we supposed to live. There are really big, deep questions that we ask each other, that we ask God, that we wrestle with ourselves. And that's why the Cultivate Podcast exists, to help us go deeper in our understanding of who God is, His Word, and the way that He's called us to live. Everyone, welcome to the Cultivate Podcast at the Grove Church. I am Charlie Lofton. I am the lead pastor there, and we are here with
Abigail Boone.
Okay, that was
I'll stick to it.
That was a softer Southern. It wasn't
okay.
Quite as.
It
wasn't called Abigail Boone.
Abigail Boone.
This wasn't that.
Yeah,
but it wasn't you trying to be normal either. By the time you went Abigail Boone, I'm like, I don't know who that is.
No.
Creative director, podcast producer, question asker,
yeesh.
Good friend.
All the things. Celtics fan. Yes, tough loss last night.
Tough loss.
They were ahead the whole entire game.
Okay, now you're going to start maybe talking. Okay,
what?
You can't talk about because that's exactly what happened to the Razorbacks in the Sweet 16, so I can't get there.
It's tough.
I was just at a conference with a whole lot of people that I don't really see very often.
Yeah.
And they all know that I'm a huge Razorback fan.
Oh,
so the number of times that I had to relive that over the course of 2 days was not fun.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, we are in a long series on systematic theology, and we just finished a section on angelology, and we did a few sections of Christology, which, surprise to you, we're going to come back to and cover a couple other things. Yeah. But we are going to, we're doing some Q&A. We did a Q&A on angels. We did a Q&A on Christology, the study of
Christ,
yes,
Jesus.
Well, there you go. Was that a Christ, Jesus, or did you read Christ
I kind of
Jesus?
second guessed myself.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. And so we're going to get you a few more.
Yeah.
I mean, if we stopped doing Q&As when you ran out of Qs,
would you run out of A's before I ran out of Qs?
We would only do Q&As.
Which would be fun.
What do you mean run out of A's? If you ask a different question, of course I've got an answer.
But surely I'd hit a point where you're like, I don't know.
Oh, well, that's different. You could ask a question I don't know.
I guess I don't know is an answer, but...
Yeah, I mean, I have got some chemistry questions. I don't know anything about chemistry.
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising to me.
Why?
I don't know. You're just kind of a, no offense, nerd. In a great way, and that I know that anytime there's a nerd category question I feel like you would probably know. Well, I mean, now that if we're just insulting each other, I probably know enough chemistry to answer whatever questions you might ask. Yeah, I say that's accurate. I agree with that statement.
Let's skip all of that and go straight to the Christology, though, please.
All right.
No chemistry questions.
Yeah, well, you did give me a teaser of what's coming next, and so... if I ask any of these questions and they fall into those categories, you can tell me that we can wait until next time.
For sure.
Because he was saying that we're going to talk a little bit about diving deeper into Jesus' teaching.
Teaching, and then what Jesus did pre-cross before we then jump from that to soteriology, which is the study of salvation and how that works.
Okay.
And
so some of these might overlap. Won't hurt my feelings if you tell me we got to wait. Last time, though, to recap us, that we looked a lot of kind of the details of what it looked like for Jesus to make up both sides, like why he was such a good mediator for us, and his sacrifice was perfect since he was man and God, and broke down a lot of those differences, and then looked a lot of questions looking at like what does it really mean that he emptied himself. So we looked at a lot of that kind of stuff. So we're going to kick it backwards for a little bit.
Okay.
Because, and you said we've already done a series over the Trinity, right? And my brain just is not remembering it.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, I'll just trust you on that one, and we might just be dipping our toes back in.
That's all right. It comes up again.
It does.
Right now. I mean, we're talking about the deity of Jesus.
Yes.
And when we talk about the deity of the Holy Spirit,
and you can ask. Going to be there.
You can ask the Trinity questions.
So I know
again.
this is going to get muddled, just because that's the nature of the Trinity questions. But obviously, the Trinity was there during creation.
Right.
So Jesus wasn't like a thing that became whenever he came as a child.
Right.
So I'm assuming he always had the same role of how he was the son
Mm-hmm.
He didn't become a son whenever he was born.
Right.
And so, because I guess that's our human terms of how we would describe a son as
Right.
someone who's born from someone.
Right.
So what was he then? How are we supposed to understand him before he came? Because that's obviously his God attributes of he's fully God and he was there. He's eternal and was there in creation and all that. Like how are we supposed to understand that he was there before he was born?
Right. And so just to make sure we're all on the same page, like John 1 talks about that everything that was created by him
Mm-hmm.
and for him.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was he the one that created, but it was created for him.
Right.
Colossians 1 says the same thing. It's a very, very, very common thought in the New Testament to describe Jesus as the one who did the creating. But also you see in Genesis 1 that it says the Spirit was hovering around. And so there, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The Spirit was hovering over here. The New Testament says it was Jesus. And so there's references to all three of them really being
But you said
intimately.
Jesus is the one who did the creating?
That is what John 1 says and Colossians 1.
I hope no one ever thinks that I'm asking questions just to pretend to ask questions for the podcast.
Are you suggesting then that Jesus is the one that created Charlie?
Legitimately.
Every now and then,
questions.
even I feel it where it's like, are you putting a ball on a tee for me? Or is like,
I'm really wondering.
That Jesus, the Son, the God the Son is the one that did the physical air quotes act of creation.
But in the creation story in Genesis, it was like God spoke and it was, right?
Right. And so then it's almost like a special reveal in the new episode. And then all of a sudden, like say the new season starts and you realize in episode 1, wait a second, it was God the Son the whole time.
Interesting. Okay.
Right.
Good
But you get the feeling, you can put all that together, that God was kind of God the Father was kind of the overseer,
mm-hmm.
and Jesus was the doer.
Okay.
And that maybe that the Spirit was kind of the power through which it happened.
It was like the background music that set the tone.
I don't know about that, but we'll let you say it. And so we know again. So then we know that Jesus was around and was deeply involved in creation and was not a part of creation,
mm-hmm.
which is something that Jehovah's Witnesses would teach. And they would add in Colossians 1 and in John chapter 1 a parenthetical word "other." And we know that every other thing was created by Jesus, implying, putting in the
right. Another category.
Everything except Jesus. Everything except Jesus.
Yeah.
But there's no linguistic reason, or I would say even a theological reason. You're just presupposed to believe that. And so Jesus was part of creation, part of creating. He is not part of creation. Okay.
Interesting.
He was involved in creating, but was not someone who was created. So he has always been around.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible also tells us that God never changes.
Right.
And nothing in his nature ever changes. And we've talked about that Jesus has a dual nature.
Mm-hmm.
He is fully God and fully human. And Jesus' nature has never changed. Then the human nature that he had
was always there.
Was not something that he added in.
Later.
He wasn't like, he was just kind of regular God, like the Father. And then it's like, hey, I'm just going to absorb this in.
Right.
So the God the Son within the Trinity has always had a dual nature, and so is different in that sense than God the Father and God the Holy Spirit, which then gives a little different flavor to Genesis 1, where it says that we were created in the image of God.
All three,
right? No, well, I'm just saying that we think of human nature was something that was created in Genesis chapter 1, but it is in fact a reflection of who the Son is. And it's not so much that in nature Jesus became like us, but we were created to be like him. But then the physical form that he takes and him coming down to earth and living a human life, that's something he had never done before, but it was not a change in his nature to become human because
Right.
God's nature doesn't change.
Right.
And so what we would call human, the image and nature of humans existed before what we would call humans existed. So
Mhm.
Jesus had a dual nature. He was fully God and fully something, right?
Mhm.
We now call it human because
Right.
now humans were created and we
But
reflect.
he was always that.
He was always that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so what was he up to?
Yeah.
Creating. He created, and then it wasn't, and then we see several instances in the Old Testament where God took the form of a human
Mm-hmm.
to communicate something to somebody. Most notable example
But
being,
did he take the form of a human, or he already had human nature?
well, there's a difference between, in this instance, where we're talking about nature and form are two different things.
Okay.
Nature is all of the things that are required to be something.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be a person and not have a physical body living on the earth? Think people in heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so all the things that are, being alive, because, if your body dies,
Mm-hmm.
you still are, and
Right.
you are still a person.
Mm-hmm.
You are just a person without a physical body. So,
Okay.
so Jesus was fully human, had a full human nature, even though he did not have a physical form
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. And so he comes to earth in these kind of what are called Christophanies.
We did a sermon series over that.
Yep. And one of the most notable ones being when he talks to Joshua, and it says that he is the angel of the Lord. And Joshua starts being like, whoa, I think I'm in the presence of God,
Mm-hmm.
starts worshiping. And the angel of the Lord says, in a very parallel statement to what the burning bush said to Moses, take
Mm-hmm.
off your feet. This is holy ground.
Take off your feet.
Take off your shoes. Sorry.
Oh, I was like,
Take
goodness.
off your shoes.
Didn't know we were Barbie dolls now.
That would be tough. It's not that God couldn't do it. It's not sure that Joshua could take off
Plugs off the socket.
Yeah. Take off your shoes. This is holy ground.
Uh-huh.
And so
Is the angel of God what they call
the angel
Jesus?
of the angel
sorry.
of the Lord, there just seems to be a difference when we talk about the angel of the Lord versus just
an angel?
angels in general. And so there are times where this angel of the Lord receives worship, and you can tell that it is not just when Jacob is wrestling.
And he hits his side.
Yeah, and Jacob looking, he was like, whoa. He tell me your name, and it's like, I'm not going to tell you my name. And then he goes zzz, and zaps him, and then Jacob kind of in hindsight is like, wow, I saw God and lived.
Uh-huh.
And there's never any correction of that.
That's a Christophany too?
Abraham has such an interaction where these three visitors come to, should we tell him what we're about to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who's we, bro?
Yeah.
And these aren't just some dudes.
Right.
Again, there are a handful of these, and people are clearer about some versus the other one. I'm a little on the fence on the fourth person in the fire of the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people say that was a Christophany. Jesus is in the fire, and there's a worship song.
I was literally singing that in my mind.
The fire.
Coming after me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And that's talking about.
So I assumed they were saying it was Jesus in the fire.
Right.
Interesting.
And so Jesus was acting as the kind of we're not being precise here. So every now and then some really theologically precise eggheads can find so apologies to any of you out there.
Plug your ears.
Right. I mean, so there's a time in which they're kind of small, lowercase I incarnations where Jesus would become,
Was he still doing, and I know this is a little bit what we'll get into next, but last Q&A episode over Christology, you're saying that he was more of a bridge ministry between the old Jewish understanding to what he was entering. Was he like doing that? We will get into that a little bit
more. So I'll say this now and then say it again here in just a little bit when we record the next one. If you think about the audience that he was primarily talking to,
even the Old Testament.
Well, in the Old Testament, he is just speaking specifically to Old Testament people.
Okay.
And helping them navigate what it means to be the chosen people of God.
Okay.
And what God has for them next. In the New Testament, during his earthly ministry, he is speaking almost exclusively to religious Jewish people.
Yeah.
And helping them reshape their mind. Hey, here's some big and small ways where you missed it. And here is what is about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he doesn't spend a whole lot of time sharing what we would call the gospel.
I know.
Hey, I'm going to die on a cross, and when I do, here's what that's going to mean. It was really just kind of
confess with your lips that I am Lord.
Right. It was prepping them.
Right.
I mean, it was just kind of, we are 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 1 month away from the most important event in the history of the universe. And I need you to be ready for it, because then when it happens, everything is about to get turned upside down. And that's different than the epistles, which are written 10 to 50 years afterwards by people who experienced it, reflecting on the significance of the greatest. So he wasn't, I mean, it was really more, I mean, I've already made this half joke once. I mean, again, it's like a teaser. He's like teasing what's about to happen. He's
more like John the Baptist than he is Paul. Isn't John the Baptist, he was like obviously preparing that Jesus was coming, but he was more so. Yeah,
he was more. Preparing. I mean, John the Baptist is getting their hearts ready to hear Jesus. Jesus is trying to reshape like an entire culture, an entire broken theological system and moral system in order for them to prepare for what was to come. Like, and again, we'll talk about this more. Just remind me, but it's kind of both this idea of they thought they could earn God's favor with their morals,
right?
And so kind of breaking them of that kind of works-based mentality, and at the same time saying, well, yeah, I mean, if you want to be good enough, you have to be even more perfect than the most perfect person you know.
Yeah.
And so you can so was Jesus teaching a higher level of legalism, or is he preparing them
understand
for something very different about to happen? But now we're doing our own teasers for the next episode.
Preparing the way. Okay, well, there's a word that you used in the last couple of episodes, and it reminds me of the word homostasis, but I know that's not the word, but it's that he was multiple. He was God and man at one time.
Hypostatic union.
Sure. So a lot of this is kind of like our understanding of who Jesus was when he was here. And then we talked a little bit about how he emptied himself, but he still had a relationship with the Father. So what did him coming to earth change his relationship to the Father? Because I know the Trinity is one, but also separate, but they have relationships to each other.
The closest thing that we would have to anything that gave any indication that there was a difference in the relationship is Luke 2:52. And Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with men. That it would seem that Jesus grew, the favor that the Father had for the Son grew.
Right. But he didn't have humans don't have upfront access to like go sit by him. Like he used to be at the right hand, and now he's limited.
And he's heading back.
Yes, but when he was on Earth,
okay.
Like, did he experience a difference in that?
Yeah, so now we're kind of I've said to people, and again, shout out to the people who accidentally find us on YouTube.
Love them.
That this is kind of a theology. This is like theology for the bottom shelf,
okay?
Right, and so in that sense, yeah, I mean, so Jesus seems to have limited himself in place and time. I am in a body that puts me at one particular place at one particular time.
Right.
And now Jesus's body and his personhood is kind of on the timeline. So then, yes, that would represent a change. Semicolon, however, comma, if God is eternal and exists outside the timeline, then he is eternally at the right hand of God and is not progressing through time in any sort of real sense, but it's kind of inserting himself at various moments, but always existing above and beyond the timeline. And so then really my question is, how does an eternal being subject itself to a timeline?
Right.
Was it illusory that he was really a part of the timeline?
What is that word?
Like
like an illusion?
The adjective form of the word illusion?
Okay.
Or is it like can you really lose omnipresence as far as when it talks about time? I was eternal, so I'm every when at once.
Right.
How can you lose it? Because if I'm every when at once, how do I then
stuck in one?
How do you? And so there comes a point, YouTube fans, that you just have to eventually get to the point that the more I talk about this, the deeper it gets, the more we really don't have the concepts of the way the universe works.
Right.
We talked about this before here in this context, trying to teach an ant about the color purple.
No, but I love that idea.
Right? Like, okay, I'm going to try to explain to an ant what purple is. And it's not that you can't communicate to an ant. Mm-hmm. It is possible to communicate some things to an ant. Right?
Yeah.
Don't go here. Right?
Well, you block them off. Yeah.
Exactly. And you are saying that this
Learned behavior.
Yeah, right? So you can communicate to them. Mm-hmm. So there are some things that you can communicate, some things that you just can't.
Right.
No matter how hard you tried, no matter how good communicator you were, you cannot communicate what the color. I should have picked a different color because Color Purple is a movie.
Great play. Never seen the movie.
Okay. Anyways,
shout out to Whoopi Goldberg.
That's the movie.
Oh, dang it.
But there are certain things that you just can't explain.
Right.
And the deeper you kind of get into how does an eternal God who exists every when and everywhere at once really fully empty himself to become limited to the timeline. Mm-hmm. If you really think about where Jesus was and what it means to be human, eventually your brain just kind of short circuits.
Yeah, sure.
And to pretend that you can fully put your mind around it is to show that you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I can draw it out on a whiteboard all you want, what it means to be above the timeline and what incarnation would look like. But if you can stop being eternal, you weren't eternal.
Yeah.
But
anytime you talk about timeline, I'm imagining Loki.
The one he's holding all the...
Yeah.
Spoiler!
Sorry, guys. But whenever you said that he drops down, it's like you just split one of the tethers. It's like... It's like, wait, what do we do now?
That's hilarious.
Okay, well, you've kind of already answered one from the previous question that I had. Since he has always had a human nature from the beginning, him dying and going back to heaven, he didn't lose a human nature at that point.
No.
Okay.
Which is why, post-resurrection, people could recognize him.
Right.
Hey, it's Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, there he is.
But he could walk through walls.
Yeah, he was recognizable for the most part. There's every now and then people would be like, "Oh, wait, that was Jesus." But he also had the holes in his hand, but he also seemed to be able to just materialize.
Right.
Which is when Paul talks about what the resurrection is going to look like. He's kind of like, I don't know. We know it's going to be like Jesus.
Is that a Christology?
We know it's going to be like Jesus, but I don't know that I could really explain what Jesus was.
Right. Yeah. Not Christology, Christophany. Was that whenever Paul encountered...
A Christophany, by definition, is an appearance of God the Son before he became Jesus.
Okay.
So now...
Postophany.
So that's just Jesus. You don't really have to call it Christophany. That's just Jesus. And so Jesus talking to Paul on the road to Damascus, talking to Paul on the road to Damascus, that's Jesus. We don't have to refer to it as, now this is what Jesus was up to, what the Son was up to before he got the name Jesus.
Okay.
No, he was already Jesus. So
okay.
Post-resurrection appearances would just be Jesus.
Okay. All right. Well, this has all been super heady and super complex categories to work within. Let's make it super practical.
Okay.
How does this impact maybe how someone relates to God, how they understand God? How does it impact their daily application of their faith, really having a good understanding of the gospel? How would it impact someone just in day-to-day life, understanding the dual nature, I guess you could say?
We talked about this when we did hamartiology, that we want to make a big deal out of sin because the more we understand how bad the news was, the better the good news is. There's also a sense of this when the bigger our Christology gets, the more we are talking about an eternal God who lives above the timeline, who created existence with his words. That's who died for you. Mm-hmm. Again, the news becomes better.
Yeah.
It was not just a person died.
Mm-hmm.
A person did die, and it was a horrible suffering death that he went through. But on scale, him going from eternal God sitting at the right hand of the Father to becoming a zygote in his mama's belly.
What is that word?
It's like even before a baby is a fetus, fetus, just a handful of cells impregnated into Mary's belly. You think about that was Jesus. Mm-hmm. That baby in there, the whole 9 months was Jesus. So at just a few weeks, it's Jesus. I mean, that the more we understand that, the bigger the sacrifice is, and how much he gave up and what he went through in order to do this for us. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that there is, and I think there's also nothing but practical around just recognizing how big God is. Mm-hmm. Jesus is a bro. He's really kind. He's really sweet. Buddy, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. I mean, that's okay. That's really good. But he also has the power to speak universes into existence. So when I ask for Jesus' help, he's not just a bro. He is a bro. And that's kind of the dual nature of Christ. Mm-hmm. He is a bro who speaks universes into existence with words. And so putting both of those things together, again, makes him not only the perfect sacrifice, but also the perfect advocate. Mm-hmm. Which is why, which has led Catholicism to emphasize one over the other, to where they feel like, no, I need to ask Mary to pray for me. Mm. I need to ask one of the saints to pray for me, because who in their right mind thinks that they could just talk to Jesus?
Right.
But that's the beauty of the dual nature is, look, of course you can't have access to Jesus, except that he came to access you.
Right.
And so that dual nature, fully understanding that, helps me know that I can approach him with confidence, and at the same time be like, there's nothing off the table.
Yeah.
Because he's not just a bro.
Yeah.
And so then we find ourselves very often with Catholicism on one side and kind of more liberal approaches to the person of Jesus. You kind of have these two extremes on just the Jesus gets us, and who could even think they could talk to him.
Right.
And we think we kind of get into an either or binary with that, when really, what would it mean if Jesus were both of those? Jesus gets us, and he is the almighty creator God of the universe. Mm-hmm. He is, for lack of a better phrase, he's a total package as far as when it comes to
10 out of 10.
What we would need in an advocate.
Yeah.
That's what he says. that's what he's up to right now.
Yeah.
Which is advocating for us.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, before you explain that, I would have said that this topic seems like either you've just never thought about it or you understand it. Mm-hmm. That's not like a one that you could get wrong just because you probably haven't ever, you could get it wrong. But most people, instead of giving it wrong, have just probably not thought about it.
Right, right.
But it does make sense that you could land on either ditch and lose a part of the full nature of who God was. Like, he really was a man that came and related to us and lived the same life that we did. But also he is incredibly holy and powerful. And so marrying the two and understanding that like you have access to both.
And I think it's important to say, and this is kind of how we can finish this one up. I think it's important to say that in a topic like this, we talked about the theology being on the bottom shelf, that it's like, it is simple enough to where you can go to the elementary class in your church, talk about who Jesus is, talk about why he died on the cross and what that means, and a kid can understand it and be baptized and have new life. Mm-hmm. It's simple enough, but it is also deep enough that no matter how smart and an abstract thinker that you are, your brain will eventually break
trying to get to the end of it.
Thinking about who Jesus really is and how the incarnation even really worked.
Right.
Or specifically the kenosis aspect of it. Yeah.
That's the other word I was thinking. What's that one?
That is it. The emptying. That was the emptying.
Okay.
Hypostatic union is how do these two natures work together when we perceive of them as having contradictory elements. Right. And then kenosis is, what did he empty? When it says he emptied himself and became a person, right? What did he empty himself of? Yeah. Which it's been so long since we recorded that. I really hope we answered that well.
I think we did.
I think we did. Perfect. We'll go with that. We'll go with that. I'll take this confidence right here.
Okay. We did it.
So we've got some more to talk about with Jesus. We're going to spend some time talking about his teachings. Because again, I joked about this a couple weeks ago that I feel like one of the most controversial things that I said was that Paul's teaching is actually more relevant to us. And so we can explain a little bit more what that means, what Jesus was teaching, and why, of course, it is still 100% relevant, because all scripture is God-breathed and profitable. Blah, 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 blah. And then we'll spend some time talking about kind of what Jesus did on earth and what the significance of the things that he was doing, his miracles and those kinds of things. So we'll talk about those. Okay. So I see you guys should come back. You're definitely coming back.
I am 100% coming back. But also, I have to let you know that it's been like a couple of weeks since we had the last one that we did of these or recorded it. And you just dropped a bomb in my brain that Jesus wasn't some random guy who appeared on the scene at 30 years old and nobody had ever heard of him. And you kind of flipped that narrative. Mm-hmm. I've told so many people that, and they're like, surely not.
So it is just commonplace that Jesus kind of just walked out of the woods one day, talked to two fishermen that he had never met in his life.
And they're like, done.
And they were just hypnotized by like, must follow random homeless man.
Well, and each person I talked to, they actually had an interesting response. They said it kind of lost a little bit of his like he was so powerful and authoritative that they just couldn't help but walk away with the stranger. It's almost like it was like this, no context. I know it's bizarre, but that just makes it so powerful.
Lay down your nets and follow me. Like,
okay,
all right. Well,
so you really flipped
Dad's
the
like,
script.
Where are you guys going? It's like, well,
we just saw something really phenomenal.
You see this dude on the beach?
Yeah.
I mean, but like Luke 2:52, right? He grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and people. That's what he was like. He was known by people.
I think you need to.
And it wasn't like Nazareth was like 10 million people. It's not like he lived in Chicago.
I think you need to put it in a sermon, though, because I think you just cracked open a new can of worms.
What he was doing is entirely speculative.
100%. But
because
I think
we do know that in a very small town, in fairly, we'll just call rural Israel, he was growing in favor with people.
Right.
And then walked out on the sea one day and said, hey, follow me. It's like, I didn't know.
But see, like, people talk about like the faith that those fishermen had to walk away, and I'm like, that is a ton of faith to trust a stranger and give your life for it. But it is a different kind of faith to still give your life to it. But I feel like you should just talk about this more often. That's my only note for you.
Well, I am not entirely inclined to talk about things that are mostly speculative, except on the Cultivate podcast.
That's where all speculation happens.
If we've only got 30 minutes on a Sunday morning, let's just talk about something a passage says.
Yeah.
Let's not speculate about what we think Jesus was doing during 18 years based on a vague principle of Luke 2:52.
And human interaction in cities. I think you should just talk about when he called the fishermen and toss out the idea.
I've got lots of theories. I got lots of theories like this.
Like what?
What was it like hanging out with Jesus? It's 13 dudes. 13 dudes, and it's late at night. They're sleeping out there outside, wilderness camping or whatever.
Sure.
What was that like? I got some ideas. I got some thoughts. It's entirely speculative.
You think they joked very much?
Did Jesus have a sense of humor? I've got some thoughts on that, but it's entirely speculative. And I'm not accustomed to making Sunday morning a time of Charlie's speculative theories.
I would really enjoy
But
that.
in a deep theological conversation, what do you imagine this was like? It feels more appropriate.
Sure. Okay.
So we've gone from overtime.
I just had to drop that there, that a lot
overtime.
of people really enjoyed that little nugget.
Oh, there you go. Just little nuggets. Taking the stuff on the bottom shelf
And we're putting it at eye level.
Now what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
Have mercy. Well, thank you for being a part of this, Abigail. Thanks as always. And we come back again. We're going to talk about Christology a little bit more, talking about the teachings and then the actions of Jesus. Please join us for that. And as always, we'd love for you to connect with us at the church, online or in person. You go to thegrovechurch.org/connect. Find everything that you want. There's a form you can fill out if you got any questions for us. We'd love to interact with you and help you in any way that we can. And again, thanks for joining us. Thank you for listening to the Cultivate Podcast. Our hope is that you are taking steps to go deeper in your faith, that you are asking big questions and you're looking for answers. We hope that we can be a resource for you through our podcast and any other way that we can help you. You can find all our episodes anywhere that you can find podcasts, including YouTube. And again, thank you so much for joining us.